it's right here.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah. 2010 is the new.
Although your front of
41.
it is kind
Yeah,
of
so-
interesting.
lots
Remember
of
being
corners and things.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just, you throw junk in, you throw junk out, and what have
Oh,
you.
I can do it under Ferndale Gas.
The only,
Continue.
the only thing is, this is what I was trying to get this afternoon.
Yes. But what you got was pretty funny.
I just got the outline.
Oh, but that was pretty funny.
It shows what the signs were, and
That's hard to read.
it's 3 foot by whatever, so many square
I
feet.
gotta find, I think a basin. I don't know. Our front
That's
steps are
weird.
crumbling.
No, I mean, like, how many
Corners of them? I don't
variances, like,
know.
out of every 10 that you hear, how many will be
This is it.
accepted?
It's really dependent.
Yeah, you just-
I would say, what I'm looking at, I'm looking for something that sets it apart a little bit. I think that's what most of us are looking for.
I'm scared I'm gonna step it where it's crumbling and it'll fall and like
Is there
I'll fall and then
hardship,
split my head
or
open.
something unique? that
Mostly,
sets
yeah,
this
because it's
incident
easier to get the
apart from
baby in and out of the
Special
front.
circumstance.
Yeah, that's
I
really
can't
what
log
I'm
in.
looking for.
Or I'm afraid like the hose man
Hardship
will
is
fall and
generally
break an ankle
first,
and then
something
I don't know,
unique.
postmen sue you. I feel like
Plugged in all day and it's at 22%.
And also something that wouldn't,
Well, I might not be able to use this.
No?
No, it's at 22%. I can't get anything open.
for the surrounding.
I can move this one over here. if you want.
Neighbors or just pedestrians, etc.
Yeah, let's do
So
it this
like,
way.
someone over on the corner said that they wanted to move their
That thing came over in
unit
the
on the other side
Pinto
of
de
the
Santa
fence.
Maria. I'm not sure.
Where
This thing is 10
I
years old.
swear, I
neighbor,
I feel like if you have a sound
maybe
it's
it's
going
going
on.
I'm sure people walking by
possibility.
might watch, see it or hear it
Okay.
or whatever, but is that really an inhibitant, as opposed to a resident having to sit
I'll pull this over here.
Their code to the internet here.
that kind of thing.
I don't know. I
There is a code to the internet, but I don't remember it. I just
else
downloaded
would
it.
support
Downloaded it.
He is that.
Right, and that's what I thought I did earlier.
Usually you log in once, that's all you need to do is.
Everybody should
I've
do
never
it.
had
See
the
if you
code.
Are we cool? You guys ready?
Ferndale 300.
Ferndale Board of Zoning Appeals, December 15, 2015, 7:03 p.m. is called to order. This evening, we have 2 public hearings on the agenda. We will open a public hearing one at a time as they're listed on the agenda, and we will allow the person looking for the adjustment, change, or whatever is necessary to speak. The city will respond, and anybody in the audience that wishes to reply to that particular situation will have a chance to speak at that time. At that point, we'll close the public hearing, and it will come to discussion of the board determinations. You may be asked additional questions at that point in time, should they come up. At that point, we would ask that you always go up to the microphone, though, and make your answers there, just so we get a clear recording of the meeting so the proper minutes can be forwarded, okay? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Director Moore,
Present.
Palmer,
Present?
Polika,
Present.
Seaver, Steidemann,
Present.
Williamson,
Here.
Chair Porter.
Here. The next would be the approval of the agenda. Does anybody on the board have any concerns with the agenda as it's currently stated? Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support. It's moved and supported. All in favor, give me an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item, approval of the minutes for our regular meeting of October 20th, 2015. Was there any concerns with the minutes from that previous meeting? Hearing none.
Chair Porter, I do have a couple of tweaks in the minutes.
All right.
At the top of page 3, we were starting to have a discussion about the variance on this garage issue. And I noticed in my comments it's not quite complete. It should say that if we decide that just the desire to move the garage closer to the fence is sufficient for a variance, we're creating a precedent with a T, overriding the council. That should probably be clarified, because the issue there is someone's desire to, basically is someone's desire not to be in compliance with the existing zoning code sufficient to meet the requirements of a variance.
That's a no. Yeah.
So that should be, I think, clarified in the minutes.
Madam Clerk, is that clear for you?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
None here.
Then, considering the adjustment as stated, I'll have a motion for the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Support.
It's moved and supported. For this one, Madam Clerk, we should have a roll call, please.
Okay. Director Polika,
Abstain?
Stedman,
Abstain.
Williamson.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Aye.
Okay. Moore,
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Oh, Chair Porter, sorry.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Next item of business, item 5 will be the first public hearing. This is consideration of 2 variance applications submitted by Steve Rector for the variance related to the minimum lot width, Ordinance 1087, Article 3, Section 24-03, and minimum lot area, Ordinance 1087, Article 3, Section 24-43, in the R1 district. I'm not going to read. It's on the minutes. I'm not going to read all the subdivision lots and so forth and so forth. Would you like to come forward and address the meeting tonight? Our public hearing is now open.
Does it matter which one? No. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on the agenda. 1203 Rosewood is a property that was purchased in June. The intent was to fix it up and rehab it at that time. It's a 90-year-old structure. It's very tired. And after looking at the budget, I went into the city of Ferndale to see what some other options might be. And I sat down with Derek for a few minutes. And after looking at the size of the lot, he asked me if I would consider possibly looking into building 2 structures if I could come before you guys and a variance would be granted. It's a 75-foot lot in width, and he felt like it was more conforming to have 2 smaller lots and 2 new structures than one larger, big-footed home.
Is that it?
Yes. I didn't state my name and address. Do I need to do that?
You should, for the record. It's technically here, but you should.
Sorry. Steve Rector, 2328 Hunt Club Drive, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, 48304.
Okay. I get a little laid back sometimes. It's okay. Thank you. Response from the city.
Sure. My name is Justin Lyons, planner for the city. As Steve mentioned, he's pursuing 2 variances today. At the previous meeting, we discussed the minimum lot width variance and some potential options, which I'll take you through. And in discussions, we realized that a second variance would also be required to cover the minimum lot area for the R1 district. And so I'll take you through what those options are for the record. The applicant provided these options, and so it's probably easier to see on your chart, but I'll explain them anyway. We divided the lots into Lot A, or the one lot split into Lot A and Lot B. Within option 1, the minimum lot width variance is 2.5 feet requested, or the variance is 2.5 feet for a total of 37.5 feet, which is the required required minimal lot width is 40 feet. So in that option, the lot would be split in half, so the variance would be 2.5 feet for each lot. Along with that option, the minimum lot area for this district is 7,905 square feet. Excuse me, the entire lot is 7,905 square feet. The variance for each lot would be 48 square feet. What's required is 4,000 square feet. So the total lot area for each would be 3,952 square feet. That's the first option, that is splitting the lot entirely in half. And then option 2 would only require a variance for Lot B, and so 2 variances there. A variance of 5 feet from the minimum lot width of 40, and then the lot area would be a variance of 95 square feet from the minimum of 4,000 square feet. So in that instance, Lot A would adhere to the existing ordinance, and then Lot B would be the lot that requires 2 variances. In your packet, there was some GIS information provided with parcel dimensions and a few explanations of why the applicant is seeking the variance. If the board did decide to grant the 2 variances, staff felt that option 1 would be most appropriate, just to have 2 new lots that were the same width instead of continuing the variety of lot widths that are within the neighborhood. And I'm here to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience this night for the public hearing that wishes to speak relating to this issue? If you would come forward, state your name and address.
I'm Jeff Schmidt. I live at 1211 Rosewood, which is right next door to the property in question. I've lived there since 1989, so good long time. I guess the first question I have came up when Mr. Rector said that somebody asked him to split the property into 2. Was that somebody from the city, or?
Because
he said his original plan was to rehab the property, and then somebody approached him about splitting up the property into 2 lots.
I'm not aware of anybody.
I mean, I thought that's what he said when he came up to
clarify, I believe the conversation was Mr. Rector was looking to see if there were other options for the site. As staff, we just give options of possibilities that you could split the lot, but didn't guarantee that that would be approved by the board, and did notify Mr. Rector that he would have to seek a variance for that.
Yeah, I can speak directly to it, but normally ask all your questions to the chair, and then we'll answer all of them.
Okay. Because it almost sounds like to me that somebody from the city almost recommended it be split into 2 lots, you know, from what he said. But my concern with living right next door is my property is about 3 feet from the property line, and if that property is going to be split and 2 houses put on there, and that's going to put a house like right next to the fence, and the fence on the other side of the house is literally right on the fence line. So those, I don't know what the plans are, if there are even plans written for how the houses are going to be placed on the lots, but it just seems like those houses are going to be awfully snug, those 4 right there, including mine, which concerns me as far as resale value and how it's going to be perceived versus having one nice big house on that nice big lot. So I guess that would be my primary concern, and, you know, I guess being selfish in this, I got the opportunity to have 2 bad neighbors versus maybe 1 bad neighbor when they move in. But, of course, you know, the safety factor, if that house catches on fire, my house catches on fire, being as close as what I perceive in the plan to be, and vice versa. So I don't know what the advantages are to the city, if it's a tax thing, you get to collect on 2 properties versus 1 property. But as far as I'm concerned, it's, from my perspective, it doesn't seem like a real good idea to split that lot up.
The board will be discussing those issues tonight, regardless of the size. If the lot's 70-foot wide or 35-foot wide or whatever the case may be, the setbacks are still the same as to the distance that a building has to be to yours. But that'll be something under discussion.
It'll still put a lot closer than what it would have been if it was just, as the ordinance is, 1 house on that lot.
Potentially, no. That's up to the individual to place the house, and if they meet the setbacks, then it's approved. So if he happened to set that house off center.
Yeah, I guess technically no, but common sense would tell you you wouldn't want to put it right next to mine or right to the other one, which is actually right on the fence line. Their house is part of the fence line.
I understand your concerns, and we will be looking at those issues as we talk about it. That's one of the things that's considered in when the board discusses, has their questions and so forth, to deal with it. And don't feel bad about coming forward. That's what we're here for.
Oh, I don't feel bad at all. You know.
Excuse me, through the chair, a little better explanation. That the new house, if there was 1 or 2, still has to meet the current
Right.
setback.
I'm basing it on where the existing house is now.
But
It's,
that's-
it's over 20 feet away from, and if his original plan was going to be to rehab that house,
Right.
I mean, he should have known it could have been rehabbed or not just by going in and inspecting it before purchasing it, which I've been in that house a number of times. I knew Ben very, very well. I don't think that house was even rehabable because it's in pretty rough shape.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's why he came forward and decided what was available through the board. So we will be discussing that issue. The item of the house being rehabbed as it sits there is not on the table, so that's nothing that will be discussed.
But it is more of an advantage, I guess. Isn't it more of an advantage to the city to have two houses on that lot versus one house as far as the amount of taxes it collects and the amount of fees it collects, garbage disposal, water, sewer?
It's, taxes are based on size, but that's,
But it is,
the city-
financially, it's better for the city to have two
we
houses
can
on that
only
lot
look at it
versus
from a
one.
legal perspective as far as what we can do in a variance. Whether the city would make more money by having an extra house or something is something the board won't consider. We have to look at the legalities and what is an acceptable use of the lot or variance to a lot.
Right, right. I just feel like being right next door to that, I have the most to lose or gain in this scenario, so.
So your recommendation
Please consider-
would be what?
To have a single structure on the property, not split.
Okay.
I think as far as property value goes, for me, I think that would be more advantageous. I think it would be more, having a higher priced house on that lot versus having two lower priced houses on that lot, would be more beneficial to everybody in the neighborhood that would be considered selling in the next couple of years. Because that is a big factor that realtors take into consideration is, what are the property values in the immediate area?
Sure.
So,
Okay.
that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your opinion. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the board? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. We shall go to the board. Are there any questions or discussion from the board?
I would like some clarification through the chair. Oh, I'm sorry.
Now that the public hearing is closed, I would like to direct or answer those questions directly. I did speak with the applicant when he came in, and we did discuss the pros and cons between two lots, two smaller homes, and then the potential for a knockdown and a rebuild of a larger structure on the home, but one structure. To answer the last question first, under the scenario of one larger structure, it's every bit as possible for the distance between the adjacent home to be the same as if it was two structures. And that possibility is real, whether it's through additions to the existing structure or an eventual knockdown and rebuild. The only way that isn't the case is if the structure stays the same size as it is now and no additions or no additional structures. So we did go through that roll of scenarios. Really, the advantage to the city on a taxable standpoint is negligible because it's taxed per square foot, whether you have one large house at 3,000 square feet or two small houses at 1,500 square feet. Really doesn't play a role. It's a price per square foot value based on comparables, and that it's a negligible difference to the city from tax revenue. The consideration was really what are the majority of the lots in the neighborhood and what's consistent with the other home sizes in the neighborhood. We did see, it appeared to us that the majority of the lots in the neighborhood were between 40 and 50, which is much closer in size to the 37.5 that's requested as opposed to the 75 that's existing. So the difference between the two, at 37.5, you get a home size that is more consistent with the majority of the homes in the neighborhood, as opposed to the potential for a larger footprint house that, although consistent with some, wasn't inconsistent with the majority. So we didn't really indicate a preference at that meeting, but we certainly, and I don't want to make any bones about it, indicated to the applicant that we felt there was a reasonable argument to be made that the variance criteria could be met based on consistency with the neighborhood and the majority of the other lots in the neighborhood. And the fact that these lots were combined to be a wider lot than what they were originally platted at took them out of conformance with the intent of the original plat. So we did have that conversation. That was the basis for it. I just wanted to make sure that was clear since Justin's representing the department on the case, but I was the one that had the original conversation with the applicant. So.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate the clarity.
Ask a quick question. Is he working for the city? Yeah, I'm the Community and Economic Development Director. I didn't know you were. No, I apologize for that, yes. Yes, I do work for the city. I assumed you did. Yes, I apologize for that.
We blame him if something happens, it's no problem.
Even if it doesn't happen, we still.
That's right. Mr. Pollock, did you have any other?
Well, yes, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the October meeting, so I'm not sure what actually took place. I did read the minutes from the October meeting, and I tried to relate the minutes to what was being asked today, and I really can't see why this wasn't resolved. Can someone explain why this was tabled?
I can
You wanna
chime in
handle
on
it?
that, sure. We had presented the application as a variance for a lot width only, and then through further discussion, we realized that in order to grant the variance for the lot width, we also had to look at the lot area as well, because both options would bring the lot area just below the 4,000 square feet minimum.
Okay. And we did not notice the width or the area.
Right.
So it was not, it couldn't be considered at the meeting because it had not been properly publicly noticed.
Okay.
Square footage of the lot.
Yep, yeah.
That cover for it?
Lake times width, yep.
Okay. Any discussion from the board? Questions, comments?
I have a question. We looked, last meeting, we looked over all the other lots in the area, and they're really all over the board. But we're looking at approximately 40 foot on 40-plus feet on all of them. Are there other properties in that neighborhood that are less than 40 foot?
I can chime in on that as well. I looked at the lot width on the surrounding streets, and then on South Rosewood, the average minimum lot width was 40. There were 4 lots that were under 40, so right around 39, most of them. And then the north side of the street on Rosewood, the average lot width was 51.5. So it is all over the board. The larger lots were primarily on Bonner, and there were 2 there that were above 56. So they are all over the board, but there are some that are smaller or lower than the minimum of 40 right now.
Right, and I don't know if there's been any building on property in the city of Ferndale that have been less than 40 feet recently. Is there any precedence that it's already taken place? Derek, what's up?
Derek?
Yes, we have on several lots, several less than 5, more than 2, I believe, issued permits for lots that were originally platted at 30 feet and are still in good standing in the ordinance.
30 feet?
Yeah, which is acceptable under the city zoning ordinance, yes.
Where are those?
I'd have to go back and look at the location. Scattered lots throughout the city.
One on Leroy.
Maplehurst. Yeah, one was on East Maplehurst in the first block.
One was on Leroy.
Yeah, I think we've done 3, if I remember
No,
correctly.
Leroy was 40. If it's 508 that you're speaking of. The new construction?
yeah.
No, it was 40.
Oh, I thought it was.
No, it was 40.
Yeah, but the answer to the question is yes, on at least 2 and I believe 3 occasions. Lots that were originally platted at 30 and in good standing at the time of the adoption of the 2010 zoning ordinance are allowed to be constructed on. without
Right,
variance,
in good
yeah.
standing at the time of the adoption, but now we're going for a variance for something
would
that
be
was
different,
existing
yeah.
at 75,
this
so
would
that's why I'm
differ.
trying to have an understanding of it. Okay.
As far as I'm aware, we haven't issued a building permit for the lot that was recently granted a variance for a width of less than 40 feet, which I believe you have the minutes of that. as
On
well.
Ardmore.
Yeah, but I don't believe we just, I'd have to check to see if we've issued the permit.
Those
for
lots
that.
in through there, though, are 35 and 38 feet, so it stays with the harmony of the neighborhood. That's why I'm trying to have an understanding how this would stay with in the harmony of the neighborhood. We have certain things that we have to go by, and hardship, there really isn't one. I'm just trying to make sense out of this. If it's denying him anything that the rest of the neighborhood was allowed to have, then we would have that situation, but I don't see that.
I noticed here, just a block over, we actually have a couple of
30s.
one's 35 and one's actually 26 and a half.
There's
Yeah, but it's not
330.
built.
And then there's,
That's
right,
not built on.
I know it's not at this point.
Yeah.
There's three, what you said, the 30s?
330s, you know, 1100, 1106.
But they're not built as separate buildings on those lots, even though the lots are those, that
Oh, I
small.
see what you're saying,
Yeah, there isn't something built on a 30-foot lot in, or 25-foot lot in that neighborhood. It's a double lot.
35 right there.
Right.
Yeah, they've split the lots.
Yeah, there's a 35-foot lot on the corner with a structure.
But not that many. That's all, I'm just trying to have an understanding. That was done when
Right.
we went anyway,
Yeah.
you know.
If I may, through the chair. I know that the next phase really goes through the planning commission, but I'd be curious to know what the intentions of property, you know, what type of buildings are going to be built on these properties. You know, is it going to conform? You know, are we going to make an agreement tonight that then doesn't conform with what the planning commission can even approve? Or we can't even.
Single-family homes don't go to the planning commission. So this, whether it's built on as-is or split into single-family homes, single-family homes are approved administratively in the department.
Then I'd like to know what the intentions are for those two properties of the size of homes. You know, if we're at 37.5 feet, you're looking at least 5 feet on each side. So the maximum width of a home is going to be 27.5 feet wide.
Correct.
That's without a driveway.
Correct.
They've been built in the city.
Oh, I know. My home is 22 feet wide.
Yeah, I think mine is too.
I just want to confirm on the driveway note, there's not an alleyway behind Rosewood, is there?
No.
So you would have to have one.
Well, if you wanted a garage, you would.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same question. I just didn't figure out the aspect of it is, would you build on one lot if you built two houses on, two much smaller lots? Or even as sort of a new member, I'm curious if you were to divide the lot into something like 50 and 20 and sell the 20 to your neighbor, how hard is that to do? Is that something that's easy for him to do, or is it a significant hardship for him to have to figure out another plan?
Splitting a lot is splitting a lot.
And then the likelihood of selling 20 feet, I think, and you could talk to the applicant, but I assume they would rather just maintain the width of the lot. There's significant value in it, whether it's a single-family lot or two single-family lots. And in considering a variance, it's difficult to envision the size of the home because you might not be dealing even with the same owner. The appropriate consideration is the two building envelopes in comparison, which is defined by the setbacks, rear, front, rear, and side. So, and those boxes on the plan, because the house could be moved, and the neighboring homeowner said it can be moved considerably within those boxes, depending on what side the driveway goes on, depending on where you want your garage, depending on if it is a single large lot development or two smaller ones. Obviously, smaller ones are going to eat up more of the building envelope. But the house can be built, and also additions can come in the future. So what's built at first may not be what's there 10, 5, 20 years from now. So it's a very difficult consideration to take into account.
And to give you an idea of what those requirements are in the R1 district, a side yard setback is 5 feet, and the maximum lot coverage a building can have on the property is 35%.
Does that address your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions? Any other discussion in general regarding the request for variance?
I thought, no, maybe I'm crazy. I thought there was included last time, and I don't have it with me, some sort of plan of what the houses were supposed to look like. Is there not, we don't have anything like that yet? Or what, just because in keeping with, no, okay,
No, we haven't seen elevations or footprints. I mean, there's,
okay.
yeah, not.
Because I remember discussing, you know, in keeping with the style of the neighborhood, but I couldn't remember exactly what was.
I think on the previous split, and I forget who were members at the time, there was elevations included with the split, but that's because that's how far along in the process they had gotten.
The Ardmore house,
I believe so, yeah, I think they had an elevation in there.
or the Ardmore lot, because there was no house there for a long time.
Yeah, but if I may, that was a simple, because it was over 40 feet, if I recall. That,
I don't remember it being more than 40. I
I
thought
thought it was like 43 and a half.
for two of them.
Yeah,
It should have been 50, is that what it was?
I think it was.
Then that's a little bit different. That is correct. Yeah,
There was an
this is-
R1 that had gone to R2.
Correct.
As a result, it changed the requirements.
Right, different, yeah. Well, but along with that, are we then going to make two non-conforming lots? That's what I'm concerned about.
I think that's what I was trying to get to when I
And
was talking
there are
about-
certain things that have to be established so that we can say that it falls within the guidelines to get a variance or to approve a variance.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, the point that Judy's making right now, if you look at the variance section in the code, section 1807, sub C1, when you're talking about what we should be looking for when we're looking at whether to grant a variance, the applicant under the code is required to prove that compliance with the strict letter of the restrictions governing area setbacks, frontage, height, bulk, or density will unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose, or would render conformity with such restrictions unnecessarily burdensome. And that in particular is something that I'm struggling with here, because while I'm personally a proponent of dense development, I'm not seeing how what would maybe be, my personal preference. I'd love to see more new houses come up in a dense way, but that you've got a property here where I'm not seeing that using it in its existing format is going to unreasonably prevent the owner from using it for a permitted purpose, or is going to render conformity with the existing restrictions unnecessarily burdensome, because there is an opportunity here to put probably a pretty nice house on that piece of property, and to, I think importantly, in tighter neighborhoods like this, you can look at the picture here, importantly, to maintain the access to a driveway into a garage, because you put two lots, you've just heard there's no real way to do that with two buildings. You can see the width of the street is not a real wide street. Suddenly there's more jockeying for parking around this position right here. I think probably most of us know what it's like to try to park on a Ferndale street when there are a lot of houses that don't have driveways that are right around there. It's not easy. And one of the things that we're supposed to be looking at when we're looking at the zoning ordinance in particular, if you even go back to Article 1 in Section 1.02, the purpose of the zoning ordinance, Section 1.02G is preserve and improve the capacity and safety of the existing street system. So those are some issues that are jumping out at me when I look at whether it makes sense to split this lot into at least one non-conforming or possibly two non-conforming parcels. There are some practical difficulties that I think should be considered here.
I think, well, the question is, does it affect the flow of traffic? Plain and simple. And could it or couldn't it?
And the neighbor said, it says right here, increased danger of fire because it's so dense and such a small street, and really, even though that area was platted probably in 1902, it's still not today's standards, and we have to keep it with today's standards.
But I do think that the setbacks are designed to deal with concerns with fire, the access for the fire department to get to something and so forth and so on. So regardless of the size, I don't care if the lot's 20 foot wide, he still has to have the same setback and distance from the house next door. So I find that one to be somewhat irrelevant at this time, personally.
I think that's correct, and we kind of mentioned that, I think, in the October meeting when we talked about distance setbacks regarding the garage discussion that was happening as well. So I think that the fire code is built into the setback. But
I believe we recently dealt with a situation where they were trying to eliminate that setback by a couple of feet and so forth. And based on current trends and the safety and so forth, it was rejected.
I was going to say, and Mr. Williamson hit the nail on the head. It's the conversation we've had internally quite often is one that centers around unnecessarily burdensome in relationship to this variance, and in its connection to a substantial justice, which is also a criteria. Is there a substantial injustice to be required to build on 75 feet of a combined lot that was not self-created versus enjoying the same justice as your neighbors who are 30 and 40 foot lots or 40 and 50 foot lots? And does that create the burdensome and meet that criteria? We've discussed it a lot internally, and obviously it's a very good discussion centered around this request. And if that injustice creates the unnecessarily burdensome situation, and that's the one we've discussed internally at some end as well.
Well, I think the new ordinances and codes that have come out in the past even 10 years, because they've changed so often, really are to make sure that we don't make any more non-conforming lots. I realize it's only 2.5 feet. It's not really that big. It's a walkway, basically. But it's still, I'd like to get some more information from the applicant of why, other than he thinks he could, to help make us have a better understanding of why we should give him a variance.
Would you like to respond to that?
Actually, may I ask a question while he's coming up to the mic?
While you're coming up, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. Mr. Polika?
Looking at the area, I know that this area is zoned R1. Is there any reason why the property owner couldn't, if we couldn't consider rezoning it to R2, allowing for the building of a duplex, and keeping the property size the same, but at least allowing for a larger structure that might conform with other homes that are in the area? I know there aren't a lot of duplexes, but this is very close to Hilton and 9 Mile, which is starting to become a more denser area. If we're looking for density, that would have to be rezoned anyways. And I know we're looking at the master plan and reconsidering all of this. Is that an option? I'm just tossing it out there as a...
Is a duplex acceptable in R1?
No.
R2 for that?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess I'm going to go back to the structures that I know that did something like that.
Let me hold that thought for a moment, because we
Sorry. Okay.
we called this gentleman up here to put him on the grill a little bit. So, and of course the question was, is there anything else you have that can justify why this works the best, or what the advantages are for you?
Can I ask that a little bit? Are you aware of what you need to prove to us to get a variance?
Well, it sounds like I have to prove a hardship.
Okay, yeah.
I'm listening. I obviously don't know all these things as well as all of you, and I honestly didn't study them. I just am looking for options.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I met with Derek, and he felt it was worth being here.
I thought that the building department was giving information to potential applicants that would give them a guideline that they would have to come before us and ask for a variance, such as, these 6 things.
Yeah, the staff report has very specific responses to all 6 in the report.
Oh, there are? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
because,
the staff report has an argument and a discussion on each of all of the criteria necessary, and there's also an application in which Mr. Rector's responded to all the criteria as well.
well, but I didn't see anything that would sway me.
Do you feel that there is a particular,
I was just wondering if there's something else is my point, yeah.
do you feel there's any particular hardship in getting that lot? Your intent is to get the lot, rehab it in one way or another and so forth. Is there any hardship that is created to you in some way by not being able to divide the lot? Can you proceed and do something else?
Yes, I would have the ability to do something else.
Any comments to that? I mean, if there's thoughts on your mind, we want to hear them.
I lived in the city for 12 years before I moved, and I know prior to the 40-foot lot, a lot of homes were built on smaller lots, and some of them had front-loading garages. So I know that it can be done and not affect some of the concerns that I heard up here. There's density on a lot of streets, and I understand that.
There is a consistency in some of those areas around there where there are homes on lots of that size or within a couple of feet of it. I do understand that. So there is a certain compatibility with the feel of the neighborhood, as where others, you have a particular neighbor, and I can see where the effect there is who has, I believe you have a wider lot. You have probably a 60 or 70-foot lot?
I'm not sure how long.
I think I've got it here.
It's 100 feet deep.
55.
Yeah, 55.
Wide enough for the house. It's a good-sized home, and the garage as well, and so forth. If I'm not mistaken, that's the right house, I think.
Yeah, we talked right around.
That's right. I saw you in front of there when I was looking at the property.
And as far as plans and elevations, I'm not in a position to invest the money to have all those designs and things built up if I have no idea what's going to happen. I'd like to be prepared and show those things, but I'm not in a position to do that.
So your concern at this point is what the flexibility is based on a decision of the zoning board regarding your request for the split of the property, and go forward from there, at which point you'll see it down in your office and make sure it meets all the codes at that point, correct?
Correct.
And basically, what are my options? And like I said, I know 40 feet is required, but I also know in the last 15 years, a lot of houses have been built on smaller lots. And again, I understand that code has changed, but that's fine. And Ms. Palmer, I don't know how well I answered your question, but I did try.
No, thank you. I was hoping for one more piece. That's all.
Well, I can, and from a staff standpoint, and obviously it's not my job to make the applicant's hardship argument. I can tell you the discussion that's taken place among staff with the argument is if the board feels that by having to build on a larger lot, by not being entitled to the same justice as the majority of the lots in the neighborhood, to build on a smaller lot, that would be the hardship. And then that would have to be defined and decided by the BZA that, in fact, and I suppose you don't have to build a home that large, but if you build a home that's consistent with the neighborhood, you're leaving a significant portion of developable property unbuilt upon. And if that's an injustice or it isn't a substantial justice, then that's where the unnecessarily burdensome and the hardship comes in, is that you have a piece of property that's bigger than what is consistently developable in the neighborhood, and to build a home that's consistent with the rest of them in the neighborhood, you leave a sizable portion of it undefined. I'm not saying that is or isn't a hardship, but that's been the discussion. It's not as clear-cut of one as if there's a tree in the middle of the lot and we don't want to cut the tree, or our garage was, taken down by an act of God. It's not as clear-cut as an argument as a hardship, and it's not one. But we felt that if the applicant wanted to come to the board, that there was certainly reason for discussion about it.
That cover it for you?
I'm not against construction of new property, that's for sure. I just want to make sure that what we do as a pseudo-judicial board is done properly.
It's consistent with what the board should be doing, correct. Any other questions or discussion? At this point, seeing none, I would accept a motion.
And as a reminder, there would be two motions, whether to approve or deny.
Correct. One motion for the variance in the size or the width of the lot, and one motion for a variance in the size of the actual property itself of, I believe, 92 feet or
95.
95 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Those should be separate motions.
Correct.
They're considered separately. If this first is to deny and is successful, the other ones become moot.
Through the chair, I put a motion on the table to deny the request for variance.
There is a motion to deny, that is,
Width or area?
and that is regarding
Width.
lot width. A motion to deny the lot width is on the table. Is there support for that?
I'll second that.
It's moved and supported. Any discussion on that motion?
I have to be honest, I'm having a really, really hard time with this. Like Ms. Palmer stated, you know, I support new development. I support, like Mr. Williamson, density. But I have to see a reason why we have to create a variance for the width. We created the requirement for a reason. We wanted to make sure that, you know, larger homes would be able to be built, so we required that 40 feet was going to be the minimum. And if we just keep avoiding that or going around it, then why even have it in place? I brought up the idea of building a duplex on the property if it's, you know, if we're looking for density. I think that's an option. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. But I personally don't think I can support this evening.
Through the chair, I mean, to the points that you're making, I think kind of are in a sense answering some of the points that Director Delacourt was mentioning earlier. They're having an internal debate as to where's the side of the justice? Is it that this applicant doesn't have justice to build on the smaller lots? Is it because he has to prove that that they have in some way more justice or more freedom than he does because they have a smaller lot? But going down that line of argument essentially moots out the lot width requirements in the zoning ordinance almost completely. Right. Because I can understand the appeal of that line of reasoning, especially when you're in situations where you'd like to see some new development happening. And in a sense, it's a variance that is relatively minor, the 2.5 feet, but it's still not in compliance with what the council has determined is going to be the rule. And we're not the council. Well, most of us aren't anyway. And, you know, again, the concern that I have is if we were to make that type of an argument internally as the board and say there is a justification for granting this variance in order to give the applicant the same freedom that the other people with non-lots on the block have, we are, I think, basically saying at that point that the zoning ordinance lot width requirements don't really matter, and I'm not prepared to do it.
And you're true. What you're pointing out is the fact that the non-conforming lots on the block are considered pre-existing non-conforming, and
Exactly.
should they need to rebuild up to 50%, I believe, from damage of the property or this or that, they may not be able to as a result of this, of the way this is structured. So you're right.
I won't comment on what I think the lot width requirement should be, because frankly, I don't know. I'll leave that to council.
Any further discussion on the motion? This is the motion for the lot width. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Okay, Director Moore,
No.
Palmer,
No.
Polika.
No.
The motion is to deny. I want to
Oh.
clarify.
Deny.
You're voting no, you're voting against the
correct.
motion to
Sorry.
deny.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was stated. I should have
Sorry.
restated.
I started to, I messed up.
Before we got to the fourth one, I thought I said something.
I was curious too.
Okay, want to start over?
Yeah, let's start over. I messed this all up.
It happens.
So
Moore?
this is to deny it, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Stedman,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Chair Porter.
Yes, it carries unanimously. I apologize for not reiterating that after our little break for, but motion carries unanimously. The extension or the cut of the lot to 37.5 feet has been denied.
Which basically means the next one.
They're all moved. Yeah.
Pardon?
The next one.
Yeah, exactly. The second one is lot space with the denial of the reduction in lot size. Lot space is not a consideration. There is no second lot in place at this point.
Correct. But it's done.
I'd like to thank you for coming forward. I appreciate your interest and concern in building in the community.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the rules are the rules, and we had to follow our own.
Thank you.
Take care.
That is a tough battle, because older neighborhoods like that, the consistency and that appearance.
Yeah, no, we've had the discussion before. It was an internal debate. It wasn't about density. That wasn't the reason. It was just about, he asked a serious question about meeting the criteria, and we could make an argument either way. So we knew it was a tough one going in. He realized it was a tough request. He knew it was on the edge.
Just out of curiosity, Greg brought up a great point, not necessarily a duplex, but because like at the corner of Camborne and Gainsborough, they built the 2-unit condo. Could that be something, or does it have to be rated R2, excuse me?
It would have to be rezoned.
Rezoned, and highly unlikely to be rezoned because it's in an R1 district?
That'd be spot zoning.
Spot rezoning.
And it's a little more intense as far as.
It doesn't just allow 2 units, then you'd open it up to more than 2.
Right.
And he's big enough to go more than 2.
Oh.
Exactly. So then the consideration, I think,
Yeah, but I'm sorry.
you get into consideration of rental properties and this and that, and that's now another concern that you get
Well,
into.
not if it's I guess, if the city says it has to be condos, that's all, it has to be owned, but a condo could be.
Yeah, we can't make that determination. City can't just decide
can't?
rental
Okay.
versus
If the zoning allows for rental property up to so many per
Multiple, R2 is just
lot and
multiple.
so forth, yeah.
2 allows more than 2.
Gotcha.
And theoretically, he could rent, if he would have built 2 single-family detached homes on this lot, he could have rented those out as well. So,
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think that was his intent.
No.
I mean, I wish you would have stayed actually just to hear this, but I mean, there's very few lots of that size in Ferndale. So like my wife and I looked for 4 months trying to find a house, eventually found one that we had to like completely redo just to get what we wanted. So I think he's actually better off having something unique versus something that's very standard, actually less than standard at 37.5.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Rector. He's not horribly disappointed. He knew this was a realistic possibility. He is happy with the ownership of the lot either way. He had considered withdrawing it for very similar reasons of his own volition, and debated. That's why it took 2 months to come back and not a month. He was trying to decide which direction to go in. So he's not going to be horribly.
And he was because there was not a complete motion in front of the board, because the lot size was not considered before in square footage, he was not reassessed and so forth for that to come back. He had the opportunity to come back to this meeting. So. At this point, we have a second public hearing in front of us, consideration excuse me, of a sign application ordinance 1050, Article 8, Section 6-268, submitted by Derek Griggs for a variance related to the maximum height of the ground sign according to the sign ordinance, Ordinance 1050, Article 8, Section 6-267. Currently, I believe that sign is 3 feet, and the variance being requested is 2 feet to get up to a height of 5 feet. Is that correct?
But the total height will be 5.5 feet.
5.5.
Yep.
5.5.
So, but it's a variance of 2 feet.
3.5, 5. Okay, yeah.
Right.
Okay. This evening, who's going to represent? I believe that's Mobile. Yes, sir. Give us your reason for the variance.
My name is Derek Greggs. I'm a representative of Aber Sign Company at 359 Livernois, also located in Ferndale. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Ferrossery, of the property at 2701 Hilton, sits right at Woodward Heights in Hilton. The property was vacant for quite a few years until he purchased it, and then he made a contract purchase with the petroleum jobber Michigan Fuels, which is pretty much almost exclusively Mobile, but they do have other brands. But he purchased the property, and then we were working with him to get a sign. The sign is currently 42 inches tall, 96 inches wide. We originally applied for a sign that was 48 inches tall, 96 inches wide, and that would have fit the maximum square footage requirement of 32 square feet, but it didn't conform to the height requirement. So we were denied. We went back with him, and then we reapplied for the 42 by 96. We were approved, but during this time, my client did have some concerns with the snow and the landscape. Primarily, he was worried that the snow was going to block the regular credit. Like if you look at how the sign is laid out, it pretty much sits right on the ground. And just a couple inches off is where the LED panels is for the regular credit price. So basically, you're looking at about 5 or 6 inches, and the regular credit price is already obstructed. When we were applying for this, he knew this, but he wanted to go ahead and get his station open right away. So we went ahead and did that, and then we came back to the city to apply for the faux brick base. We wanted to raise it 24 inches up. So we knew that we were going to get denied because it would make it non-conforming, raising it up 2 feet past the height requirement. So we went and came back and reapplied so we could go for the variance. My client's main concerns basically is the fact that with the snow sitting on, like when it does snow, when it sits on the LED panels, he's worried about condensation and damage to the sign, specifically shorts and whatnot, and also just the fact that if there's snow, you can't see the price anyway. And then he also wanted to do landscaping around the sign as well, but it's kind of hard to do so when it sits right on the ground, and any kind of landscaping right in front of the sign is going to be obstructed anyway. We do understand that in theory, we could, you could like shrink the sign area to maybe raise the height or whatnot a little bit, but we also have mobile standards to take into consideration as well. If you look at the sign, you'll see how the LEDs are laid out. We can't actually shrink those because those are the smallest kinds of LEDs that mobile will allow on those signs. We have to go by their standards as well. Those are currently 8-inch LED reds, and those are the absolute smallest ones that they would provide. So in order to do that, we would have to shrink the verbiage on the sign and whatnot, but that would make it already difficult to read because a 28 square foot sign is pretty small to begin with.
We're viewing that right at the moment here, just Thank you. We appreciate your presentation. And the city's response?
Sure. I think you already kind of heard, but the applicant's requesting a variance of 2 feet for a ground sign, and since this is the first sign appeal that this body has seen, just to clarify, the ground sign definition is a three-dimensional self-supporting permanent base-mounted freestanding sign which does not allow visual clearance underneath. The applicant's requesting a variance to add a 2 feet faux brick section to the existing sign, and obviously you have that in your packet. But I wanted to just go through briefly some of the requirements that you'll be reviewing as part of the sign appeal requirement. The applicant has to demonstrate a variance is due to a practical difficulty on the site. The variance must be, to be warranted, must be relatively large for the site, right, or the frontage. Significantly improve the conformity of the site. That doesn't really apply because the sign already, the existing sign conforms, and this would bring it into nonconformance. And practical difficulty, unique conditions, being exceptional or peculiar to the property, and then allowing the variance would have to show a substantial justice being made, and would not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Just in case you didn't get to see the sign appeals requirements before the meeting. But that's pretty much done.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak relating to the sign? If you'd come forward and address the microphone, give us your name and address. And
first off, my name is Hank Kinsey. I have a building.
Sorry?
You need to open
the hearing.
Oh, I should open it. It falls under public hearing. Sorry about that. But public hearing is open for your discussion.
We can't have that.
Formalities.
Okay, now who are you?
All for formal.
I'm pretty laid back.
My name is Hank Kinsey, and I own a building at 2801 Hilton, which there's one building between mine and the service station. And we all should be, first off, I wanted to say this first. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to who it might apply to one and all here. I hope it's 2016 is your best. I am thrilled that this gas station, service station, is open. We all know how terrible it's been for a long, long time. I am very proud of that section of Hilton Road and how my neighbors have all really stepped up to the plate. And I wanted to go over and see if I could do something when they were in there working, if I could help them speed it up. When it was all done, I mean, I kept wondering when it's going to open. I don't care what they're going to charge. I'm buying my gas here. And I wondered when they opened it why they put the sign on the ground. I thought, Jesus, I just wish you Merry Christmas. I just don't get it. If it snows, it's going to be gone. It's going to be shorted out, and I'm going to be going by a brand new station that looks like it's old. I come down 14 Mile Road, down Campbell to my building almost every day. The stations at 11 Mile Road in Campbell have signs almost the same. One's a mobile, and they're up. I drove down Hilton because my wife couldn't get the sign. You couldn't get it in her mind, so I said, come on, let's take a look at it. And after that, coming to 9 Mile Road, I look at the dentist office. It's up, and I know the variances. I don't have a chance, is the way the last one went. But that dentist office up that high. Warillo's Bar, Subway. She said, well, I don't want it as high as Subway. I said, well, how about the sign that says 2 cheeseburgers for 99 cents? Now, I assume, of course you know what that does, but I assume their sign will grow no bigger, that they're asking for a 2-foot pedestal to put it on, 1 or 2 of them. You can't landscape now. The sign, if they put grass, of course, it'll be all blown against it. If you've all seen the sign, if you've seen it, I would think that you would think it should be raised. Now, that doesn't mean that that's not that you should do it without the variance. But why would you want it on the ground? Now, as I mentioned quickly and was told back, yeah, you could put a smaller sign. I listened to the gentleman say that's mobile sign size. I guess if he opened up a speedway, maybe he could have got a smaller one. It doesn't look obtrusive on Hilton, and I can't imagine if it was on 2 cement blocks, and I'm not suggesting that, but if it was, that it wouldn't look a little better. It won't block the crosswalk traffic, etc. I hate variances, just like you agreed that if 37.5 feet's okay, why can't 36 feet be okay? And pretty soon we'll put 2 mobile trailers on there, and was that what we were trying to do? No, and that's 40. I just think in this instance, and I know you don't want a huge sign saying Elvis is back, but I guess it's a mobile service station where a service station has been for the 30 years that I've been there except when it's been closed. The last guy cut the telephone pole down. This looks like a couple of young men. I have no dog in the hunt, nothing at all. There's no sign there, but I sure hope the station stays open. If that's the sign they're asking for, I would ask all of you, if you haven't seen it, drive by it, I would ask you all to vote yes, to raise that sign up a couple of feet and approve it. And then maybe to revisit the ordinance. Maybe you should have that if it's a business on Goodrich, but maybe on a thoroughfare we just repaved, did a beautiful job, although I don't know what the green patches and the bike lanes are. I think we should be able to raise the sign a bit. That's what I'm here for. Again, no dog in the hunt at all, except I love Ferndale. It's been good to me, and I'm going to own the building for a long time. That's 2 buildings from it. I think you should raise the sign, or we'll be looking at a rusty, shorted out sign maybe after the winter. God bless. Again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year to all of you.
Thank you.
May the board wish happy holidays to you and just thank you for your participation and willingness to come out for your community. Anybody further in the audience that wishes to address? If you have another comment, please come up to the mic, though.
My apologies, I didn't quite address this before too. If you're wondering how we had planned on raising the sign up, what we intended on doing was using the existing footings. We put those in ourselves, so we were going to use the existing footings to just put a pole and raise that up 2 feet, and then around will be like a frame, and then we'll put the panels around. We know that because we put the footings in ourselves, that we know that that can support a sign that's easily 3 or 4 times that size, just in case you're wondering.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm sure somebody would have asked you that question. At this point now, the public hearing is now closed. Discussion from the board or questions?
Yes, through the board. I mean, through the chair.
Mr. Palmer.
Ms. Palmer?
I guess I'm curious. Does that sign have to be there? Or couldn't it be placed somewhere else?
Well, technically, no, it doesn't have to be there, but they're very limited on space and where they can locate a monument sign.
Okay, I guess.
Based on sidewalks, curb cuts, and everything, it is the most logical location for the sign.
Okay, so not on the overhang?
Well, they are allowed a certain amount of wall sides in addition to this. This is a monument sign, and they're allowed that in addition to wall signage.
And not the tall signs like we see at most gas stations?
Pole signs and pylon signs are now prohibited outright in the city of Ferndale.
Totally, okay. So if it was already there,
They would be
and they
able to
were just
replace
changing it out, they could have done that. Because I don't remember one ever being there, a tall pole one, so.
If it's an existing non-conforming sign, they could change the panel out as long as the sign doesn't get any taller or sign area get any bigger.
Any further comment?
Through the chair. I am very familiar with that corner because several years ago, during Clean the Ferndale Up, a bunch of us spent about 3 hours weeding that corner where that sign actually is. There used to be a large bush there. You guys ripped that out.
It's in the picture.
Pardon?
It's in this picture that I found.
Oh.
Online.
Oh, okay.
Online,
yeah.
yeah.
There was a big evergreen, and we.
Grab it.
Yep.
That's what there's.
Well, and I also know because I was on that space for so long that ground is actually raised about 12 to 14 inches. So that's actually like kind of an island that has been created with the dirt. My concern would be if you add another 2 feet, you're putting that sign now 3 feet up in the air. It being 42 inches tall, you're making it that high. So I may be rushing this, but I could support this if we're talking about the sign starting at ground level. So if we're going 2 feet from ground level and then the sign, so, pretty much, taking that mound to the ground and then going up 2 feet, because I don't want to see a 3 foot, the wall created 3 feet high or 40 inches high, and then you have another 42 inches of a sign, because now you're just creating this big wall.
And be dead for traffic.
80-inch wall. So I could support that if I knew that ground was going to be then leveled.
To clarify, the total height would be 5.5 feet, and that is measured from the actual ground. So
From the ground?
From the ground.
Sidewalk or the parking lot?
yeah,
or?
so from this sign, it would be to that grass or dirt that's below the sign there. So
Right, but he's saying that's already raised.
okay.
That's it's
Is that,
already.
is that still right, was that removed or taken down? Because when I was over there today, that looked, there's a big light post that comes out and a couple of other things, and those, it was pretty close to sidewalk.
It doesn't look raised in.
Yeah.
It looks
Yeah.
like.
Oh, then they've taken all that
has
down.
come down,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, okay. Because there used to be a mound. I don't know if you guys recall, but it used to be a mound. So, yes?
I was going to say, and I do want to clarify, Justin did an excellent job of the staff report. We are recommending denial of this variance for a couple of reasons, and very specific reasons. And it's not anything different than what's said. We feel the same way about the gas station. I've lived here 15 years. We're ecstatic to have mobile. But as the BZA knows, and I'm sure it would come up at some point here, is this is the only board that sets precedent. The only two arguments the applicant has offered is, one, we made the sign in violation of the ordinance. And we made it before we requested the variance. And we made it such that we used all of the sign area and didn't include any space for a lift on it. So we made the sign area as big as we could and didn't leave room to put a monument under it. And two, their argument is that we need to keep it this big because corporate says so, which have always been reasons not to grant a variance, because then the precedent is set that if corporate tells us to, it's justification for a variance, which then once you use that as a reason to grant a variance, then anybody's corporate standards, you've now said, are reason to grant a variance from the city's ordinances. And although we agree, and we could discuss whether the sign is large enough, and it certainly shouldn't sit on the ground, I agree 100%, but that should have been considered before they made it. And they made it, and then when they realized it had to sit on the ground, then they came in, and instead of making a smaller sign on a 2-foot pedestal, which would conform, they would like the variance. And I don't disagree with all the reasoning as to why it should be off the ground and why it's a great thing to have a visible sign. But our argument as staff is those two reasons are specifically not reasons to grant a variance.
I should mention,
regardless of what grade it sits on.
some years ago, they had a problem with Ford Motor Company as well, with an old sign, and Ford changed their oval that year, but that's 10, 15 years.
It's something we run into on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I have a question for the sign maker, if I may, please. Has anyone gone to corporate and said we're having issues? Can we have a variance from the corporate aspect?
You read my mind.
But you have to come up to the mic, please.
I'm just thinking it's an alternative.
Yeah, you might want to sit right near the podium.
Have a seat right up front.
Stay right up there.
We have gone to mobile to see what our alternative was in regards to the issue that you brought up. The other option that I suppose that we could have done was there are, in some cases, custom signs that can be made. Like the sign that was proposed that Mr. Fury is currently using is what is considered to be like a stock size. Like every sign, like most of the major gas stations have like stock sizes, and then there are some custom-made signs that they can have done under certain circumstances. But we are still trying to get information from mobile as to whether there was an alternative that we can do. But during that time, that was the best option that we saw available.
All right, I was just thinking that would be.
I have a kind of a question to piggyback off that. I know that, like, alternatives from headquarters, but I'm trying to think of other gas stations I've seen. I know you said that the high signs are not allowed, but is there any other signs that mobile provides or are allowed that aren't like this, or is this kind of sign required by mobile? Did I miss that, or I'm trying to think of other ways gas stations present their prices.
That's why I said
they're around on the. I don't know if this
on the
mobile
overhang.
Does it have an overhang?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Canopy,
you are
thank you.
referring to canopy signage. Canopy signage is allowed depending on the site. However, every At least from my knowledge, every mobile gas station has to have a ground sign.
Okay, so
you can have
canopy signage is more like
signs.
supplemental?
Exactly. You can have those to supplement, but you cannot just have only exclusively canopy signage and not have ground signage.
And I believe their sign application package takes full advantage of all of the allowable signage in the city. This isn't the only sign that'll be on the site, I believe. I believe there's additional signs on the building and on the canopy as well.
Yeah, a separate, I think, a different company provided the canopy signage, the mobile on each street frontage, I believe.
Right. There's channel letters on the canopies, and then there's some building signage as well. The only thing that would display the price would be the ground sign, obviously.
Correct.
So they're taking full advantage of the signage allowed from the site.
Is it actually going to be seen? I see 2 poles in the way.
I can tell you that I find cruising Hilton, south going north, coming down, was it Woodward Heights, no, Camborne? No, Woodward Heights there, coming across that way and so forth. There is, because it's down and there's a pole and then there's a black post for a light fixture and so forth, it does make it a little difficult. Coming from the north heading south, it's clear, as long as there's no vehicles or pedestrians there.
East and west, it looks like you wouldn't even be able to see it at all.
Right, exactly.
It's completely perpendicular with your drive.
Right.
Or parallel with your drive, sorry.
Google?
Yeah, just on Google Maps.
Oh.
It's like right behind the pole.
Any further questions or discussion? I'm going to go to you, Derry. Is there any way, I understand his concern with shorting and so forth, with the sign being at that level and where they'd have to display snow and so forth, even in a mild snow and so forth, it would be very difficult. Is there any way to grate something like that and clear below so he has drainage there or something? Or?
Certainly if the sign doesn't project above allowable height based on average grade. And again, that situation is a self-created one by building the sign to the maximum area, not leaving room to raise it up on a pedestal. But we would certainly be glad to work with them if there's any way to alter that, to correct it from a building standpoint. But I would have to look into it.
Because I appreciate the comments. Obviously, I want them to be a good, healthy business in the community, but
yeah, we
within our boundaries.
we absolutely agree that the sign should be on a pedestal. We don't disagree. The issue is they made it, they used all the allowable sign areas and didn't leave room for the pedestal. They should have designed the sign face to be smaller, and we understand corporate standards. We deal that with every sign in the city. Corporate would like them to have a larger sign, or more signage, or additional signage, and we deal with that on almost every sign package received. There is room in other facilities in the city have demonstrated you can put up a monument sign and save room for a pedestal. You just have to make a smaller sign area. In this instance, the biggest problem is the sign area was made and didn't take that into consideration. They didn't take into consideration the need to raise it off the ground before they made the sign.
It does strike you that way, too, as you approach that sign. For a sign being on the ground, that's a big sign on the ground.
Yeah.
I guess it wouldn't even matter if it got turned this way. You know what I mean?
No, the angle of it makes no difference,
okay.
especially not to the request, the criteria for the rest of the variance.
Right.
We're not making an argument based on site or
Right.
anything else. It's strictly corporate standards and that. It's basically prefabricated, so it did not leave room for a pedestal.
Right. Or, I guess, something as a barrier at the bottom, too.
Yeah, those can always be removed through construction. If there's any grade issues, as long as they don't create a pooling effect by taking it down below sidewalk grade or create a trip hazard, they can set the grade at whether they feel appropriate based on the criteria. We measure from average grade, so we would accept a couple of shots of different areas around there and then take the 4 spots. It's usually done from a building, so it's usually a bigger space.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to demonstrate that there's a hump and use some average grade for the calculation, we're usually pretty flexible in how we do our measurements.
So right now, the only thing that they could possibly do is raise it maybe 4 inches? Is that the way I'm looking at it?
No.
They
No,
can't
it's
even
maximum
do
right
that.
now.
It's max, okay, got
They
it.
make the sign space itself the maximum allowable by the.
Correct.
Yeah, we haven't utilized the full square footage, but the height is what we have maxed out on. We're currently sitting at 28 square feet compared to the 32 maximum, but we are at the maximum height, 42 inches.
We could make it a little wider and raise it up.
Yeah, but then you need a variance to cover the sidewalk.
That's why I'm saying, does it have to go there? I was trying to think of somewhere else it could go, that's all. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I understand the concern that it is a tight space.
And from our, may I speak? I'm sorry.
If you want.
When we had our survey conducted through MISDIG to see where we could dig the footings, it was based on those findings, the power lines and whatnot and everything else we had to take in consideration. As he said, that was by far the most logical spot for it to go.
All the entire
Makes
site,
sense.
the entire, we certainly agree with the circumstances. The entire site is tight. It's small for a gas station. It was small for access. Anywhere else they would locate it, they would lose visibility and have the same construction difficulties probably. We would run into sidewalk issues with driveways. So I do believe they're looking at the best spot on the site to put this on.
Any further questions, requests for information? Hearing none from the board, a motion would be in order.
Unfortunately, I'd like to make the, fortunately and unfortunately, I'd like to make a motion to deny the approval of the variance. Does not conform to any of our signage codes and regulations. That's about it.
Is there support for that motion?
Support.
It's moved and supported. Discussion on the motion to deny.
It's, through the chair, it's difficult. Again, I have nothing against the business. For so many years, we had to see it empty and look forward to someone finally moving in here, and it has absolutely no issue with the business, with who's moving in, the type of business, the company, nothing. I don't want to set a precedence. If I say it's okay to raise this one 2 feet or a foot or 6 inches, then the next person coming along is going to do the same thing. Well, you did it for them. Why can't you do it for us? We made the sign first too. I don't want to set that precedent.
No, and as staff, we agree. If there was ever a case where we wish we could administratively wiggle something in on a dimensional, but it's so visible, it's on the corridor, it's right there.
Yeah.
We don't disagree. We're so happy to have them that we hate to make that recommendation.
And I didn't realize, when I spoke earlier, I did not realize that 42 was the maximum. I thought it was 5.5 feet, or 5 feet was the maximum.
5.5 with the variance is what he was looking at.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I misunderstood that, but yeah, that's a lot of difference.
It's difficult for me as well, because I'm personally, as I told Derek before the meeting, I'm an anti-monument sign person. I like them up away, so you see the people and you see them and so forth and so on. But that's not what the rules are today. And I guess I'm the old guy in the crowd or something. I don't know.
I'm anti-billboard. I think it's just visual noise. I like to see them on the ground. I don't want visual noise when I'm driving.
See, and in my case, I see them. I go by areas where they have monument signs, and you can't notice them. They're not ahead where you can view them ahead. And I go by some of those shopping districts. So, it's a thing. But the question is, what's the ordinance? What do we have? And is this allowable? And can we be dictated to by corporate by saying that's what we demand? No, they don't demand. There's different signs in different places, and we have other mobile stations actually in the city. So
I feel that signage is always something that's tricky. I mean, even in school, we would go round and round about signage and different things, and it's, because you, like you said, you hate deny a business, and, you know, you want to see Ferndale grow, but it's always a tricky situation I've found.
Definitely is. Any further discussion?
I'll just say, I just somehow have a feeling that if Mobile is told that the sign has to be different from this sign, I just have a feeling that somehow they'll ultimately agree that their sign can be different.
Sure,
I would hope so.
Yeah. And the fact that that there has been no response from them yet, I feel that the request for variance is maybe a little premature without having fully explored what the options are with Mobile's requirements to have a sign that can do what Mobile wants them to do, but yet still be within the requirements that we have in our zoning ordinance.
It is their responsibility to look at the ordinance, know how high that sign can be, and if there was a concern with the possibility of it sitting on the ground and snow and other things being slopped into the sign and so forth, it should have been addressed at that point, which is true. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Director Seidemann?
The vote is to deny, so yes.
Yes.
A second one.
Someone second the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Yeah. Going back to,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, vote to deny, yes.
All right. Just want to make sure I've got it right. Williamson?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Polika?
Sadly, yes.
Chair Porter?
I'll give you a sadly yes, too. Motion does carry unanimously. I'm sorry we couldn't accommodate you with that this evening, but we appreciate your business in the community and hope that can be worked out. Next item of business this evening. Next item of business would be, where am I at here? I'm off. Any communications or announcements from our fond members here at the city?
Just real quickly, yeah, you guys are obviously now going to be handling signs. There was a conversation that took place at the council. Councilman Polika was a big part of that conversation. And with staff's recommendation, the council and the city attorney, the sign ordinance and variances from have now been placed back in the Zoning Board of Appeals, where it appears to be the most appropriate place. So, and we want to try to find a better way to keep you guys busy. So, signs, as Ms. Moore pointed out, are quite often the most contentious thing we deal with on a regular basis. We do see variance requests from signs quite often based on the sign ordinance. Council and the Planning Commission have been consistent on what they want to see in signage in the city. And then there are often, we understand the process and the business owners and the franchisees and the sign companies are asked to pursue these variances on a regular basis as a matter of course before they make a decision or decide to change something. And so we expect you to see some more of these. Please let us know if you have any questions about it, but that's probably the biggest item of note for us to bring up as staff.
So less garages and more signs?
My garages and signs will probably still be there. Well, we might fix garages, so it might just be signs for a while.
Okay, just thought I'd ask. I can't believe.
Thank you.
Along with communications, we'll have announcements, and that is that for sending this to the board, somebody is letting the air out of Mr. Polika's tires at this point. This evening, you got a new booklet.
Didn't he walk over?
No, I drove.
I know that.
We'd have to let the air out of his shoes, for God's sake. There was a new booklet in front of you this evening. It was from a seminar, and it doesn't deal directly. It doesn't deal directly with us, maybe. I mean, what we have been looking at in the past and so forth. But it has a nice spin on thought and awareness of not only your own community, but how things are changing around you and so forth, legal aspects and what have you. So you might want to take a look through it. I had some other, did I give you some of the notes I had from that conference? I might have scrambled in some notes.
Just what was written on the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. But anyway, it's worth your time, I think, to fan through. They presented scenarios. We had a chance to sit and look at them, and they brought up little surprises, and the township right next door had just done the same thing with a similar issue. And so it basically said, pay attention and look at what's going on from the full perspective of the ordinance that's in place. And so hopefully you'll pick up something from it. Anybody else have any comments? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Wait, weren't we supposed to? Oh, no, this is January.
I find it interesting.
Elected officials
This
in
no longer
January or
exists.
February.
This no longer exists, and that's going to be